All right, we're back after my second reboot. Once again, same scenario. All I've got going is my screen recorder, and I'm going to bring up my command prompt. And then hopefully we get something like this time. So right after 2 reboots, if I can get it going. But folks, this should be worst case scenario for you. If you were lucky and started with a clean configuration, chances are that command worked the first time and you don't have to go through the rigmarole that I just went through. But if you're one of those people that explores, like I am, sometimes you might have these tools on here. There's also the possibility, and it's probably an outside possibility, that some people may have installed software that required the Ruby libraries to be present on their machine, so you might have Ruby on there for other reasons. So we don't really know. What I am going to do one more time, and I will say for those of you that need to go, please feel free to go because technically our time has already expired. But I am going to proceed to the next step. So I'm recording this, and don't worry, we will revisit this stuff next week to make sure everybody's okay because we really can't work unless everybody's installed completely. So I'm going back to the core shell. We're going to move on to the next step, which is to install Rails. Logging into Blackboard here. So we're moving on to our next set of instructions. So at this point, we're assuming that the first 7 steps are complete. And now we're going to, from the command line, type this really cryptic looking command. And yes, if you want, like I said in Windows 10, you can actually copy that. So I'm just going to highlight it right from here. And I'm going to let you know that the command that we're about to type here is kind of interesting. And I'll talk about it more, I guess, from this interface. I guess the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my font size up by 1 level. I think that's going to look better in the video. And the other thing I'm going to do is, I know right now I'm in my own user directory, and I'm going to type a command. And we will revisit this next week. I'm going to type cd space / and then press enter. And what that does is it puts me in the root of the C drive. Okay. And at this point, I'm going to issue a command, the one that was in the directions. And yes, if you want, you can just look at it and type it in manually, no big deal. But I want to show you that you can copy and paste commands into this interface. Now, in Windows 10, I can just Control V, and it works. However, if you happen to be Windows 8, 8.1, 7, Vista, XP, or earlier, any of the old command prompt systems, the only way that you can paste to the interface is actually to right-click and then paste. Just so you know, okay? And that's true on a lot of graphical operating systems command line things, but the fact that we can Control V in Windows 10 is a wonderful thing. Yeah, somebody was thinking, right? Give that man a raise. Because it's such a simple thing, really. All right, so what we have here now is basically, I mean, you can probably guess, right? There's a word install, and there's Rails, right? The thing that sits before it is kind of interesting. It's a gem, right? Now, you guys have probably all worked with Visual Studio at this point, and at some point you probably added, through the NuGet package manager, added like jQuery or something to a project. This is Ruby's equivalent. So in Ruby, they don't call them packages, they call them gems, right? And so what are we doing? We're installing a gem for Rails, which is the framework we need to do our work. Following it, there's 2 command line switches. I forget what the first one is, but the second one says, don't bother with the documentation. And I have to remember, I have to look at my notes what the first one is, but it's related to the documentation, which basically makes the install take about 5 times as long as it needs to. So this is just a trick I've learned over time. And then I also discovered I never looked at the documentation files on my hard drive, so I burden the hard drive with 10, 50, I don't know, 100 megs worth of stuff that it doesn't need. So that's my thinking. I'm going to press enter and let it do its work. Yep. If you happen to get a message about firewalls, and I didn't because I've done this before, and I'm sorry that I did pause the video to talk to somebody as they were leaving, but here's a complete output of what came out on my screen. And what it does basically is when it does the install, it's not pulling the install files from your local hard drive. What it does is it actually connects up to an online repository, and that's why it says fetching. So what it's doing is it's actually going to the online repository, logging in through FTP, downloading the file, and then pulling it down to your machine and installing it. It is cool, right? But that's exactly what the NuGet package manager does in Visual Studio too. Oh, absolutely. Command prompt is where this stuff was invented. So what's really neat about that is it didn't just obviously install one thing, it actually brought a bunch of stuff with it. So what you're going to discover, and this is true with a lot of installed applications regardless of platform, is you go to install one thing, but things have what they call dependencies. So if I want to run Rails, that's great, but apparently I have a dependency for active support, action view, action packed, blah, 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 blah. All these different things are part of the environment. And then notice Rails is actually the last thing to get installed. Why? Because it depends on all these other things being present first. So not only could you, I guess, hypothetically go out and find each one of these things manually and install them as a gem, but you would have to, you'd have to know what comes one after the other. So there's more gems that we will install. Some of them are just kind of automatically there, and some of them get installed as we're working on projects. Now we check to see if Rails is successfully installed. So we are going to move up to step 9 here, and then I'll save the rest of it. You guys can try the rest of it on your own, mind you, but we'll save the rest of it for next week because we are a good 10 minutes or so past end of class here. So I'm going to go ahead and type Rails-V, and it should come back with the version number, which is 5.2.1. We have Ruby installed, we have Rails installed. Now the part that's really fun, which is what comes next, we're out of time, but those of you that are still here in the classroom, feel free to go ahead and try it. But basically what happens is when you have the two frameworks installed, all it takes to create a website is you type a simple command, name the project, press enter, launch your local server, and the website is running. Just like that. I know it sounds pretty magical. Of course, there's stipulations and nuances. I won't kid you. But really, in essence, that's all there is to it. All right, folks, that ends this video. Maybe I'll take these 3 videos that I made and stitch them into one. We'll see. I feel ambitious. But I will have this posted the day after class, and next week, now that we have this stuff installed, now we can start digging into learning this stuff. I'll see you next time.